and then I'll pop back on. I'll be right back with you all. You hang tight. Okay, good morning, good morning, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone jumping in from all around the world. Welcome. My name is Zach Taylor. I am the director of Psychotherapy Networker, an educational nonprofit, and business manager at Pessy. And we are unbelievably thrilled to be able to offer this to almost a little over 17,000 people registered for this event. And if you know what you're about to experience, you'll know why. We're going to have a really great couple of days. I love the reactions. I'm seeing them here. We're going to have a really great couple of days here with none other than Terry Real, probably one of the most renowned and, if I can say so, one of the most interesting couples therapists I've ever witnessed work. He works incisively, quickly, and yet so compassionately. You're going to see something today, if you've never seen him work, that is pretty profound. And so good for you for taking a little bit of your time, a lot of your time actually, to be here and dedicate yourself to this. I know that online webinars can sometimes be a little dry, a little boring. I get it. I'm sitting here for 2 days as well. I don't get to see you. You don't get to see each other. But we kind of have to imagine ourselves together in sort of one body for a moment and do our best to experience that level of connection that we would if we were in person. Because something really important is going to happen in the next couple days. We're actually going to witness Terry working with a couple he's never worked with before, who's in a real situation. And all of us therapists, we know how to deal with that situation with kindness and compassion and respect, as well as learn clinically how he's able to move a couple from here to there. So, a couple of housekeeping things, and then I want to bring Terry on in just a moment. Um, First of all, this is live. Thanks for your patience. If anything goes wrong, we are really, our producer is really good at bringing us back online as quickly as possible. So please forgive us in advance. We'll do our very, very best. Number two, a lot of the information you need is in your portal where you accessed this video, this complete schedule for the next 2 days. Every hour by hour, you'll see exactly what we're going to do. And I'm going to do my best to stick us to that. understanding this is a live event. There will be time for Q&A. Please do put just questions related to this event in that Q&A. If you have questions about tech or customer service questions about CE, all of those technical logistical things, our customer service people are right here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where I'm coming from. They're live, that you can call them, you can email them, you can chat with them. Chatting's often the quickest, right on Pesky.com. So please do that. And with that, you're also going to have 14 days to watch this for free. You can go back and rewatch certain portions. But if you know you want to keep this, you can purchase the lifetime access version right in your portal, right where you're at. And then the other thing is if you want CE credits for your time the next 2 days, which why not? You can purchase that live now at any time till the end of this next 2 days. So at the end of Tuesday, you can purchase live CEs. So go ahead and do that anytime on a break or whatever. That should be available in your portal to do. Okay. With that, again, my name is Zach Taylor, for those who are just joining, Director of Psychotherapy Networker, and I am so pleased to welcome you. Welcome to the stage, Terry Real. And if you're with us, Terry, this is your big moment. Thank you.
Hi, Zach.
All right.
Hi, everybody. People are sending me that's so sweet. Okay. So you really set it
Yep.
up. Let me give you a sort of thumbnail of our schedule today, everybody. I will be meeting just with you observers. And it's really been an amazing crowd. About 17,000 people signed up. We've already got 1,500 people live on the call. It's very, very gratifying that so many people are here. We're going to go from 10-ish to 11:30, and I'm going to give you a brief overview of one kind of couples therapy, the kind I've created. It's called RLT, Relational Life Therapy. So just give you a sense of what the hell I think I'm going to be doing here. Who knows what will actually happen. Then there'll be a 15-minute break. We come back, all of these times are Eastern, of course. We come back at 11:45 Eastern, and the couple comes in to join us. And I will work with them from 11:45 to 1 o'clock, so 75 minutes. We're going to take a very brief lunch break, 30 minutes. The couple is coming back at 1:30, and I'm going to work with them for 2 hours, from 1:30 to 3:30 Eastern. The couple leaves, and we have a short break, and then we all get to debrief and talk about what you saw me do and what your questions are and what I thought I was doing. So that's the basic schedule. And here is your intro.
Take it away, Terry.
Uh,
Thank you.
Say again, Zach? Oh, okay, bye. Um, what a wonderful man and supporter Zach has been throughout this whole process. Really lucky to have him. Okay, so my name is Terry Real. And I don't know if I can increase my volume. I'm going to try. Give me a second. Yeah, no, it's all the way up. Thank you for pointing that out. And Zach, let me tell you, I'm going to hand it to you because I know we're going to turn off chat. If my voice drops, which it sometimes can, particularly when I'm working live, then let me know, Zach, and I'll curl up to my computer even more and try and speak up a bit. Um, okay. Um, so I know I'm pitching to, in some ways, two cohorts. Uh, there's a group of you, I imagine, who, how shall I say it, are relatively new to couples therapy in general. I mean, this is the part where I wish I could have a show of hands to all 2,000 of you. But, and I would say, how many of you are primarily individual therapists and see couples or are thinking about seeing couples or are frightened to see couples? How many of you really need to be briefed on what is couples therapy and how the hell do you do it? A lot of reaction here versus how many of you are already trained seasoned couples therapists and you want to learn about this particular form that I've created, relational life therapy. So I think I've got two groups here, and what we're going to be doing is a 2-day crash intro into one particular school of couples therapy. It's called relational life therapy. And I created it over decades. We have, as Zach and I will tell you, an online training program. We'll go into great detail about how you can learn more about RLT and become an RLT therapist. Um, and but this is one couples therapy. There are others, and this is not really how shall I say it? Um, average couples therapy. RLT breaks from a lot of the convention and mores that I learned as a young couples therapist in my training. I trained at a place called well, after my psychiatric social work degree, which was Smith. I trained for several years at a place called the Family Institute of Cambridge, and then taught there for about 20 years. So uh, the other question for many of you is how many of you had either, to be honest, relatively superficial or even no training in family systems thinking and technique. It's really amazing. But part of it, I see a lot of reaction. Part of why seeing couples is so daunting for so many of us is we have no real training in how to do it. We've gotten trained as individual therapists, and we think that we can just transpose our skills, but it ain't that simple. And let me say right off the bat that the usual nurturant, oh, I'm sorry, that feels bad. Tell me more about it. And how do you feel, Mr. Jones? Okay, and tell me understand that. What I think what you're saying is, and I'm going to make him a gay couple. And how do you feel, Mr. Smith? And okay, that sort of individual, nurturant, empathic, even interpretive work that we do, that is not going to transform a couple. And part of the reason why so many of us feel overwhelmed with couples or even the thought of seeing couples is no one's taught us how to think about it and what to do. I'd be overwhelmed cooking a hot dog if I didn't know how to do it. So I'm going to talk about RLT, but I don't want to leave behind those who really need a basic briefing on how to think about working with a couple to begin with. So first, let me say something about me and RLT, and then I'm going to double back. Back in the, oh yeah, after about a year and a half and 72 hours of DEIB training, I've learned to locate myself, as do all the faculty at the RLT school these days. My name is Terry Real. I am broadcasting to you from my combination office guest bedroom in my little but beautiful home in Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, where I'm lucky enough to live with my wife, Belinda Berman Real. Belinda's also a terrific couples family trauma specialist, therapist. We're both therapists. I've been married heading on 40 years. I am a white, heterosexual, cisgendered, as of yesterday, 2 days ago, 74-year-old male, with all of the privileges and all the blind spots that that implies. And I always start off by saying, when, I don't even say if, I'm going to say when I say something that strikes any of you as insensitive, even cringeworthy, um, please, you have the right to protect yourself, but my wish is that you speak up. Let Zach know that something didn't rub you the right way. And let's use the very relational skills that I'm teaching to uh, repair it and be with each other through it. Okay, who am I? Back in the 90s, I wrote a book called I Don't Want to Talk About It, Overcoming the Secret Legacy of Male Depression. It was the first book ever written about male depression. Before that book, depression was seen as a woman's disease, much like alcoholism had been seen as a man's disease. I'm proud of my part in bringing male depression out into the public consciousness. There are millions of depressed men in North America and beyond, as you all know. So the book did pretty well. And it was chock full of clinical vignettes. And I got calls around the country and indeed around the world saying, is there somebody in Topeka or London or wherever that does the kind of work you do in your book? And at first, I would refer people as best I could to trained couples therapists, family therapists, because it was almost always the partner of the man who was calling. But after about a year or two, the light bulb went off, and I said, look, if you're desperate enough and you have the resources, come to Boston, where I had my practice. And what evolved was a 2-day, I call it relational intervention. The couple and I would sit, as this couple and I are going to sit for 2 whole days, uh, at 10 to 4:30, break for lunch, a couple breaks. But that's it. I would work with them more consistently than here because there would be no observers to debrief. So it was a little more concentrated, but pretty much the same thing. At the end of those 2 days, our contract was you were either back on track or getting a divorce. I'm not saying I fixed everybody. You went back with an elaborate treatment plan. You go to AA, you get medicine, you need DBT, you need individually. Almost always there was ongoing something. Uh, Informally, we're just doing outcome studies now, but informally, those who followed the program did well. Those who did not mostly did well too for 6 months to a year, and then um, but almost all of them were saved. And um, I noticed that I broke just about every rule there was to break that I had learned in couples therapy school. Uh, and I'll detail some of the differences in a moment. The great feminist psychologist Carol Gilligan joined me for about 5 years sporadically for a research project. I would deal with a couple on the brink of divorce in front of one mirror. Carol assembled a group of diverse observers, anthropologists, sociologists, therapists of many different stripes, analytic, behavioral, literary people, all sorts of. And after I worked for about 2.5 hours in front of them, they came out and Carol would lead the discussion for another 2.5 hours. And each from their different orientation would describe what they saw me do. And it was really out of these conversations that the basics of relational life therapy was born back in the 90s and about the turn of the century. As I say, we have about a 2.5 year training program to be fully accredited, and there are now fully accredited RLT therapists around the world. Um, There's some of the differences before I launch into basic couples therapy to begin with. Some of the differences of RLT that I think make it distinct are A, we are not neutral. When I was in couples therapy school, the cardinal rule is don't take sides. And the subtext was particularly don't take sides with a woman against a man in a heterosexual relationship. If you lost your neutrality, you had to go talk to your supervisor for a while. We take sides. Not all problems are 50-50. Uh, One of the lenses I'll be talking to you about is specific to when there's a power imbalance in the couple. But let me just say, when there is a power imbalance in the couple, an RLT therapist throws their weight behind the disempowered one, empowers them to speak up and take on the more irresponsible, aggressive, anti-relation, non-relational one, and then uses that as leverage to get to the more grandiose partner. If there is an asymmetry, not all couples are fit into that category. So we take sides. And as you might have uh, inferred from what I say, another big difference is we take on issues of grandiosity. For 50 years, psychotherapy, self-help, even the great Oprah Winfrey, may she live forever, have been obsessed with shame and trauma, helping people come up from the one down, of feeling inferior, defective, unlovable. We all know what shame does to us and feels like. But we've done a terrible job of helping people come down from the one up of superiority, contempt, aggression, demandingness, entitlement, shutdown. This is what I call the other self-esteem disorder. And we have 8 million sayings in RLT, and one of them is we want the weak to stand up and the mighty to melt. Intimacy is in the middle. Intimacy demands healthy self-esteem. You are neither better than nor less than anybody else to the left or to the right of you. And you cannot really be intimate from a one down inferior position. You cannot be intimate from a one up superior position, whether it's overt and boundary violating, yelling, screaming, throwing things, or whether it's more passive and walled off and withholding. Uh, Love demands democracy. So, in some ways, even though we think about intimacy, obviously, uh, we're also working on self-esteem. One of the things I do, and I'd also suggest you read my new book, Us, Getting Past You and Me to Build a More Loving Relationship, Us, US, proud to say New York Times bestseller. And I talk about coming out from under the great lie that a human being or group of human beings could be essentially inferior or superior to another. That's just a lie. It's a lie that Western civilization has run on for many centuries. And we're no better nor worse than anyone else. And that includes the therapist working with the client. We're no better or worse than anyone else. So we take sides and we deal with grandiosity. I will talk with you if it shows up in this couple in more detail about some of the differences between grandiosity and shame and how to work with those differences. It's really critical. We're taught as therapists to not take on grandiosity. I call this the core collusion of patriarchy. We don't tell truth to power. You don't lean into a difficult person and confront them. If you do, we therapists are afraid the person will blow up and get mad at us, or they'll storm off and leave, or sit there and shut down a stone wall, or they'll fall apart, and it will be our fault because we will have hurt them. These are the same fears that stop a heteronormative woman from confronting her husband. These are the fears of patriarchy. Um, Under patriarchy, the perpetrator is protected, not confronted. So RLT is very different from almost all other therapies in that we're taught in school. First, you form a trusting alliance with your client. It could be up to a couple of years. And then you confront a difficult truth. Good luck with that. In RLT, we create an alliance with our difficult clients by telling them the difficult truths about themselves right out of the starting gate. But you have to know how to do that. So, anyway, that's RLT. Let me say, when you all, I hope all 17,000 of you, go on to do our training. When you do, there are three, we call them level one, level two, level three trainings. It's the equivalent of 2 intensive days with me. And then there's a lot of work along with that. But in the level one training, you will be acquainted with data gathering. That's the first step. We tell the truth in RLT to our clients. And people always say to me, how do you get away with it? Well, there's a lot of skill involved in how we tell the truth. Any fool can clobber a client with the truth. The art is what we call joining through the truth. Confronting the client's difficult behavior in a way that's so loving, so on their side, so empathic, and so accurate that they feel more trusting of you and closer to you because you've confronted their difficult behavior, not less. And there's an art to that. But one of the ways we get away with it is we're right, we're accurate. And another of the 8 million sayings is in RLT, generic, weak, specific, strong. So the more specifically we can speak to somebody about what they're doing, the more credibility they have. This is a kind of a couples therapy equivalent to therapeutic empathy. I see you. I see what you're doing. And again, you and your partner are involved in a pursuer distancer relationship. Okay. That's like a C minus. How about this? Listen, Cheryl, you go after your partner and complain about there not being close. It's an interesting move, Cheryl, because if you look at the content you're pursuing, but it's actually a stance I call pseudo pursuit, because you're not really inviting him in, you're complaining about him. It's the content looks like pursuit, but what's actually going on is complaint. And I have a terrible news for you. Complaint is not seductive. That's joining through the truth. That's confronting Cheryl with what she's doing that will blow her foot off every time. And uh, so it's one thing to say you're in a pursue or distance relationship. It's another thing to say it was actually not pursued. It's pseudo pursued. And let me tell you something else, Cheryl. When you ask Steve for blah, 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 and in the session just now, he does a version of giving it to you. Do you remember how you responded? Uh, you didn't like it. You told him and he was doing it wrong. You critiqued it. Do you remember that? No. Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of people do that. That's normal, I think. A lot of people do that. It's a very natural response. But I'll tell you what's interesting watching you is on the one hand, uh, you're, if I may, insisting on intimacy, demanding intimacy, which I agree with. I'm on your side. I like intimacy. So on the one hand, you're demanding intimacy. On the other, uh, I don't know that you're the soul of receptivity. Now that's an interesting combination. Okay, so this is the kind of specificity that we teach RLT therapists to be able to use. Um, a dear, somewhat flamboyant gay client I had after a first session said, I feel splayed and filleted. That's good. And you know you've done a great RLT session when the client says to you, I got more out of one session with you than 4 years with Dr. So that's good. You're on track. So, okay. Um, so what is this truth that we're so busy joining? Where do we get it? In RLT level 1 training, you will be acquainted with no less than 8 lenses, diagnostic lenses that we use. I'm not going to go over them. It takes the equivalent of 2 days. But I will do a few that are critical. And they're critical if you're doing RLT couples therapy or any other kind of couples therapy. If you're thinking systemically, like a family therapist, um, traditional therapy, psychodynamically oriented therapy, is about interiority. It's what goes on inside. Traditionally, family therapy is about the interpersonal space, what goes on between people. In RLT, we combine the two, and many forms of couples therapy now moving both to inside and outside. But traditional family therapy is what goes on between people. A kid is truant. A traditional individual therapist asks, well, what does this truancy mean? A family therapist asks, who is this kid going home to take care of? So it's how does it play? What's on the other side of the seesaw? It's relational. One of I'm going to give you just 2 of the 8 lenses to start us off. One is presenting problem. And uh, I don't think I'm going to take Q&A, Zach. I'm just going to give an overview and then work with the couple and then do Q&A. One is presenting problem. I always ask students, how do you get to the presenting problem? But in the interest of time, I'll cut to the chase. It's a trick question. There is no presenting problem. There are 2 presenting problems, partner A and partner B. They rarely agree. What's wrong with my marriage? Belinda. What's wrong with Belinda? Well, she's so Belinda-esque. Each partner wants the other to change, which could be changing as little as just get her off my back, which you hear a lot from men. A lot of heterosexual men are not all that dissatisfied with their marriages. They're unhappy that their wives are so unhappy with them. But both partners want change. One partner may want change more than the other. quite often it's the woman in heterosexual relations, but not always. And the change that they want is really the characterological. I want you, I'm dragging in this person so that you can render them more relational because the way they're being is so not relational that it's really hard to be with them. And again, when I learned couples therapy, deep characterological change you farmed out to somebody else. But in RLT, there are three phases to the work. The first we call waking up the client. This is where you confront either or both parties about what they're doing to blow their foot off, joining through the truth. The second is trauma work. We do deep character work in the presence of the other person. We're pretty unique in that regard. I don't like that most trauma work is done behind closed doors. It's infinitely preferable to do it with your partner sitting there if unless there's some specific contraindications, we'll get into all that. So first, this is what you keep repeating that is going to get you misery. Second, where did you learn this from? Let's go back to your childhood and let's do some trauma work so that you're less flooded and you can use skills. And then the third phase is teaching you the skill. And again, I differ from a lot of trauma people right now. My pal Dick Schwartz and I have been around the block several times publicly on this. A lot of trauma people believe if you do the trauma work and remove the trauma, people will just intrinsically know how to be intimate. But I think that's wishful thinking. Uh, we've never wanted more from our relationships. We really want to be lifelong lovers. But that's occurring in an individualistic patriarchal system that we're all in. And to this day, it has not transformationally shifted. So we're trying to have superb relationships in what's essentially an anti-relational culture, certainly not a relationship cherishing culture. And we don't have the skills. We don't know how to fight fair. We don't know how to proactively go after what we want. We don't know how to deal when our partner goes off the rails. We don't know how to negotiate. We just don't know the basic skills. So I think it's cruel for a therapist to point out what you're doing wrong and then not layer in what right would look like. So there are three phases. This is what you're doing that's wrong. This is what right would look like. But between those two, let's go back to where you learned it. The great Sue Johnson was completely right when she said, once you're emotionally triggered, skills go out the window. You have to deal with the flooding. That's why I think great, just a couples therapy that's all skill-based without dealing with trauma is going to be limited because it is inevitable that we wound each other, we trauma trigger each other, and that has to be dealt with. And we'll be talking a lot more about that. So first we look at presenting problem. Partner A, partner B. What do you want changed here? And that will tell you their reality and it will tell you their agenda for you for the therapy. Here's our agenda. The second, one of the second early lenses is what we call stance, stance, dance. This is couples therapy 101. Stance, stance, stance. Partner A's relational stance, partner B's relational stance, and how they combine to create a feedback loop, vicious circle, which reinforces and just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And we teach, I would like you all to master the phrase, the more, the more. Susie, the more you pursue Bill, the more you withdraw, Bill, the more you withdraw, Susie, the more you pursue, the more, the more. A self-reinforcing feedback loop. And I will say to people, this is like a perpetual motion. Once you wind this up, it just goes on and eats everything in your relationship until there's nothing left. That's usually when people see me on the brink of divorce. Uh, the blame is on the pattern. Pay attention to this. The blame is on the pattern, not the people. Oh, you poor dears, you've been caught in this. And that is an example of the key to joining through the truth. I call it healthy self-esteem and therapeutic action. What is healthy self-esteem? Is holding yourself in warm regard, even while feeling proportionately bad about bad behavior, or imperfections, or failures, or character flaws. You feel bad about your bad behavior. You're supposed to. If you don't, you're grandiose. You're a sociopath. Feel proportionally bad about your bad behavior, but hold yourself in warm regard as a flawed human being. I'm a good person who behaved badly. I feel remorse about my bad behavior. Let me do what I can to help you feel better, whoever I hurt, if that's appropriate. But I'm not going to turn it into shame, into an ad hominem personal attack. I'm not a bad person. I'm a good person who behaved badly. And this is key to joining through the truth. Bill, you know a sad Bill who's been philandering for 20 years, lying, cheating. You're a decent guy. I am talking to a decent man who's behaved indecently for 20 years. Will you let me rescue the real you from this nonsense? That's joining through the truth. And I just want to tell you, we'll go into this in a little more detail as we move into the trauma work. The essence there is our belief in the three parts of the human psyche. Uh, I'm grounded as a couples therapist in stand. What is the vicious circle and is it changing? That's our report card as couples therapists. They can have great cathartic healing. They can have beautiful insight. But if they're not changing the way they behave with each other, your therapy isn't going anywhere. It's not all RLT therapists have black belts in detachment from outcome. It's not our responsibility as theirs. We can only do our best. But it is your report card as the couples therapist. Is the dance moving? Are they doing different things? And what that means is, are they accessing a different part of it? And we'll talk more about that. Are they in their wise adult prefrontal cortex, the part of you that can stop and think and use new relational skills? Or are they in what we call the wounded child part of you, amygdala, uh, very young, very reactive, first moments of life to 4 or 5. Just cry. Just feel it. Or are you in the all important adaptive child part of you? AC, adaptive child part of you. The you that you created to cope with whatever you were contending with as a kid. Looks like a grown up, may even be rewarded in the world out there, but makes a hash of your personal life. Belinda grew up in a violent home. I grew up, for those of you who've read my books, in a violent home. We're both fighters. We have adaptive children that are fighters, and our knee-jerk dysfunctional relational stance is to fight. Screw me, screw me, screw me. We're symmetrical. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. And that's where we go when we're triggered. As my pal Cabo Monte says, in relationships, you rarely see the wound, you see the scar. And breaking up stance means that I'm helping my clients move out of the adaptive child automatic knee-jerk response into something more thoughtful that can do something different in the heat of the moment. So first, we take a look at what the hell is going on, and then we see about what to do about it. Well, okay, thank you for listening. And many of you have questions that you send to Zach. We'll get them. Zach, I think it's time to we're taking a break. Is that right? 15-minute break, and then we're bringing the couple in. Yeah. Oh no, I'm way
We're a little
early.
bit we're a little bit early, but
That's great. Okay, well let's do some
we
Q&A.
we have time for Q&A. Yeah, great.
Yeah, let's
Good.
do some
I
Q&A.
know
Okay.
I know people are itching to jump in here.
Well, I
If
covered a
you
lot of territory.
Yeah, you did. If you have a question, drop it in the Q&A. Chat will be turned back on. Just so you know, chat will be turned off every once in a while for the next for this event, during the sessions and during teaching. But during this time, you're welcome to interact. And if you have a question for Terry, throw it in the Q&A. Okay. Hopefully everyone's doing good. Let's see here. Okay, let me start at the top because you can upvote these questions too. All right, this is the first question's a little bit of a right on topic. Can you please share how you define grandiosity in a relationship? How does it show up? What do you see? What do you hear?
That's a stupid question.
Okay, well, that's a good example, Terry.
Superiority, contempt, looking down your nose at somebody, being above them, but also entitlement, being above the rules. People speak about narcissism all over the place. But I'm sorry if I didn't really mean that. I was just joking around, but I first said, ouch. It does hurt to be on the receiving end of grandiosity. And again, it can be straight out contempt, which can be implicit or explicit, just looking down my nose at you. It can also be contempt for the rules, being above the rules. But whatever it is, it's above and it's contempt. Now, listen, um, one of the ideas I'm really proud of came to me one day. I was going in the car, and it occurred to me that the emotional energy, the emotion of grandiosity, superiority, and the emotion of shame are not different emotions. It's the same emotion in different directions. And that emotion is contempt. Think about it like a flashlight. When the beam of contempt goes out, oh, that's Zach or whoever asked that question. What a dumbass guy, blah, 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 blah. I can't believe he, blah, 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 blah. We call that grandiosity. When the beam of contempt swings on me, oh my God, what a stupid question. I can't believe I made a joke when that guy asked me about Grandy. And now I hurt his feelings on him. And that, what a way to start off. Now everybody, oh God, I'm not terrible. That's shame. But it's the same energy. It can even be the same words.
Mhm.
What an asshole that, what an asshole. And the point is to turn off the contempt flashlight. I used to think that contempt preceded emotional violence and physical. But now I see contempt as emotional violence. And I invite my couples, I want you to invite all of you to live nonviolent lives, nonviolent between you and others, and nonviolent between your ears. We teach people not to be contemptuous to themselves either. So we're interested in a contempt-free life. And when that contempt goes out at Zach, it's easy in some ways to spot as grandiosity. When the contempt goes for ordinary people and the rules, and I get to do things my way, that's also contempt and grandiosity. Uh, Somebody asks, is it pride? No, you can have healthy pride. I mean, maybe if you're a medieval Christian, I guess you would say, but in today's parlance, I want you to feel good. You make a killing at the stock market, feel good. Some handsome guy flirts with you, feel good. You lose money, feel bad. You say something really stupid in front of a dinner party, feel bad. This is not Marxism. Don't check your brains at the door. I want you to feel good and bad about life's vicissitudes, but there's a firewall between those feelings and your essential worth. You behaved badly. You are a good person. And that's joining through the truth as a therapist. If I'm looking at my patient, Zach, for the moment, I'm picking on poor Zach, I am holding a very clear mirror up to his difficult behavior. Zach, what's it like to you to lose it and start screaming at your kids like that? I hope he feels bad about it. A lot of people in grandiosity don't feel bad enough. I'm holding up the mirror of your behavior and I'm holding you in warm regard as a flawed person just like me, no worse, no better than me. And it's this combination of truth and love, of holding the mirror up so clearly and yet holding him so warmly, that allows the work to proceed. So,
Yeah. And for those who go on to train with Terry, like in the level one, you introduce the grid. And the grid is sort of the thing that you always hold in your mind between grandiosity and shame and being one up and one down. Uh, it's a little bit of a therapy career changing grid. So if you get a chance to get your hands on that, that's what Terry's talking about. I'm glad you separated grandiosity and pride. Um, a lot of us, a lot of people, there's a great question. How do you work with couples when there's a narcissistic partner? And I would imagine you believe narcissism is slightly different than grandiosity as well at times. Is that true?
not that, I'm not a big fan of the current obsession on quote unquote narcissism. I prefer to call somebody grandiose and selfish, in plain English. And
But Terry, what
I
about
grew,
this?
go
What
ahead.
about this phenomenon of sort of covert narcissism or vulnerable narcissism, which doesn't, I guess, includes a kind of grandiosity, but in sort of this, how do you frame that in your mind?
Well, what people call covert narcissism is really somebody who's sitting on a shame core who is escaping the one down by going into the one up, which is very common for people in general and essential to traditional masculinity. That is, in some ways, the definition of traditional masculinity. But also, not every narcissist, it has a shame core. That's a therapeutic myth. Pat Love gave me about 50% of grandiose people are escaping covert shame. The other 50% just think they're better than you and I. And
Hmm.
you can create a grandiose adult by falsely empowering a child. You're the greatest thing since sliced bread is not a favor. And one of the things I've inherited from my beautiful mentor, Pia Melody, is this very powerful notion that falsely empowering a child is a form of abuse. It's no favor to the child. And disempowering a child, which is what we normally think of as abusive, you suck, you're worthless, you're a piece of shit, let me break your arm, leads to shame. False empowerment can lead to grandiosity. I have a friend who self-proclaims having issues with narcissism. He's a painter, and he told me that he went to a Picasso exhibit as a young man with his mom, and at the end of the exhibit, his mom says, "You're better than that guy. I don't know why. He gets an exhibit and you don't. That's not a favor." Hero children are falsely empowered, caretakers, surrogate spouses, incest victims. They're all falsely empowered. You're
Yeah.
special.
Yeah.
One last thing that I like to say, I don't like to say, but perhaps the most destructive phrase in the English language is, honey, you understand me more than your father does. And it's not a favor, that's a burden.
That's
So
when a mother says
grandiosity,
it. When like
yeah,
a, okay.
yeah. So grandiosity can be a defense against shame, but it can also just be the inheritance of
Yeah.
being told how special you are.
Yeah. So you actually prefer we move away from the word narcissism or narcissistic personality and use more language around or understandings around grandiosity and and shame.
Yeah, because you can do something with it. You know, the other thing that people always say when they talk about these narcissistic people is they're untreatable. Well,
Yeah.
in RLT, we treat these people breakfast, lunch, and
Yeah.
dinner.
I know we're spending a little bit of time on this question, but this narcissism thing is such a hot topic, and you have such
Yeah.
interesting ideas about it. I think you do go into this in the level one training I know, but this is just such an interesting moment in therapy when we're talking about narcissism so much. Next question. The three phases you mentioned, could you just repeat those three phases and how do those how do those sort of progress in a session or in a therapy? Do you do them in, are they linear? Are they in order typically? And what are
Um,
the
it,
three?
it, yeah, I would say if this were a student asking me, you do them in order. You do them linearly. And you also slow down and take your time. I'm very, very fast. And there's no, I want to say this, there's no virtue in being fast. It's just how I am. I created this thing. I've been doing it for 40 years. So I move around and I violate the cookbook more than I want my students to.
Mhm.
So I may mix things up a bit, but I don't want you to. First, data gathering. And there are three sources of data, what they say, and this is where bringing the partner is so critical. They rat each other out. It's so different from individual therapy. I will find out more from your wife about what's going on with you, Zach, than 6 months of therapy talking to you alone. One session will save us 6 months of work.
We'll see
So
about that.
is the report, their own report and their partner's report. It's how they operate in front of you. And people help us by doing the very thing that they're being ratted out right in front of us. And then there's how you feel sitting with them. And again, we have these 8 lenses that you use. The grid is one, self-esteem and boundaries, what's the presenting problem, preconditions, drinking, major psychiatric. What is your family role? We have a lot of different sort of literally lenses, and then you learn to superimpose all 8, and you get a very detailed picture of who they are and how they mesh with one another.
Can you just repeat the three phases just so people get them, just one after another?
One, waking up the client. This is what you're doing that's blowing your foot off. Let's get you to stop it. 2, trauma work, deep family of origin work, inner child work. I want you to go back to little Zach, who learned, for example, to shut down and evade. Where did you learn that from? Who are you shutting down? For example, one of our 8 million sayings, the thicker the wall, the more you can infer the intrusion. Show me the thumbprint, and I'll tell you about the thumb.
Mhm.
So who and what were you adapting to? And let's do some trauma work to bring you in relationship to these young parts of you so that you can simmer them down and stay in your wise adult. And then 3, skill building.
Mhm.
Let me teach you how to, now that you're in your wise adult and not getting flooded all the time, let me teach you how to do this better. So loving confrontation, waking up the client, trauma work, where did this come from? And skill
Yeah.
building, let me teach you how to do it differently.
Yeah. And what's interesting about RLT is you cover just a lot of ground that other therapies sort of focus on. You tend to cover them all. So, you know, more behavioral couples therapy would focus on skill building, but you're very clear you can't do the skills if you've got all this past trauma creeping in, emotions creeping up that you don't have any understanding of, um, so that you work through it, you work through all of it in a sort of a progression. You kind of hit them with the truth, then do the trauma, the deep work, the past work, the what you call the adaptive child work, and then three is skill building to actually make the behavioral changes they need, which I think is great. So
Thank you. I think it's the combination of all three together
yeah,
that produces transformation. RLT is known for producing deep transformational change quickly and permanently. And I think it's because we bring all this to bear. Most people, most therapies, they don't even start by confronting you about what you're doing wrong. It will sit around and nurture the hell out of it for 2 years before we even deal with the fact that you yell and scream at your partner.
yeah,
We do that right out of the gate. And then once we get that, there's a separation, what Dick Schwartz calls on blending. Look, Zach, the part of you, and of course, this isn't the real you, but the part of you that's yelling and screaming at your wife, that's not the best part of you. That's not the real you, prefrontal cortex wise adult. That's what you learn to do is you're a fighter, man. Who are you fighting as a little boy?
yeah,
Oh my God. I was listening to my parents scream at each other every single goddamn night. And when my dad would go out, if I didn't fight, well, good for you. We always teach our students, always be respectful of the exquisite intelligence of the adaptive child. You
yeah,
did exactly what you needed to do back then, but you're not back there anymore. And adaptive then, maladaptive now.
right,
Your wife is not your brutal father, and you're not that 4-year-old boy who has to defend himself.
yeah,
Let me teach you something new. So first the confrontation. Zach, you're yelling and screaming at your what the hell is going on here? And if your wife in this role play it isn't standing up to you, we explicitly empower her to stand up to you. Mrs. Zach, what's going to happen if it doesn't get better? We call this empowering the latent, the one down one. We bring him or her up, and they have some realistic negative consequences for you. Then we come in under that and say, Zach, let me help you. If we don't do that piece first, empowering the one down one, and we just take on the grandiose one up one with no leverage in our back pocket, we're going to get fired.
yeah,
Uh, this is what every therapist is afraid of, but we don't back away from it. First, we empower the people around you to stand up to you, and then we use that to help motivate you to do the work.
yeah, right. Good. And I'm sure it's good to keep those three phases in mind. The waking up the client and joining through the truth, the trauma work and family of origin, and the skill building as we see this actual therapy progress today, soon. So I think if you're looking for an anchor and you don't know RLT, those three phases, look for those three phases in Terry's work as you try and follow along. It was really good. Next question. You mentioned IFS. So where does RLT bring in IFS principles and what are the main differences, would you say?
Oh my God, that's a whole day workshop,
Yeah,
which it would be very fun to have. Listen, the second phase, inner child work, many people say looks a lot like IFS. I didn't learn it from Dick, or it doesn't. I don't. It doesn't come through IFS. It comes through PMLD. John Bradshaw was doing parts work, inner child work, with 1,000 people in the audience 60
yeah,
years ago.
yeah,
IFS is not the only group that does parts work. So but there are some similarities. Both IFS and we have a tripart system of the psyche. What IFS calls managers and protectors, we call the adaptive child. I see this differently than IFS. I don't see your adaptive child as always there to protect the wounded part of you. The adaptive child adapted. And for example, my artistic friend whose mother thinks he's better than Picasso has an adaptive child that thinks he's better than other people. That is not protecting a wounded part of him. That's an adaptation that he learned. We'll talk more about this. The adaptive child part of us is almost always an amalgam of reacting to what happened to you. That's the protective part, but also taking in modeling what happened to you, and that's not covered in IFS. So there are a few different, and one
Mhm.
of the big differences that the work that is similar to IFS is the second of three phases. IFS leaves out confronting people, particularly grandiose people, and it leaves out skill building. So
Yeah.
I would say IFS is similar to 1/3 of the three pieces of loyalty.
Mhm. Next question. Do you work with individuals? Can RLT be used with individuals? Let's say they're not in a relationship or coming in for a relationship problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we're developing a whole track of RLT for individuals. Obviously, individuals come to us who are not in an intimate relationship or whose partners simply refuse to come in. And we can do deep work with you. We can do coaching with you. Um, but even when we do individual work, our preference is to at least have one or two sessions with your partner.
Mhm.
Uh, there's an old saying, individual therapy is family therapy in the dark. And I would invite, I would ask you to reach out to your partner and say to her, I want your perspective on Zach to help me. And also, Zach's putting a lot of time and energy and money into changing. That's what we're doing here. Well, the person's gonna have to deal with his changes again too. So I want there to be a line of communication as Zach changes. If you have questions, concerns with it, I want you to feel free to talk to me about it. Um, so we always have an eye on the system, even if we're doing individual work.
Sure, sure. Right. A lot of people are discovering John Bradshaw now and Pia Melody. So I found in these trainings when you mention other developers and other people, people get really interested. So make sure you write down those names and look them up later. John Bradshaw, Pia Melody. These are all people who've been who have influenced Terry and over the years.
Yeah. They're not well known because it's a different silo. They're extremely well known in the 12-step recovery community,
Yeah.
but they're not that well known in the psychotherapy community.
That's
And
a good point.
what a sh what a shame that is, actually.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Um, okay, so uh, how do you deal with cultural and religious differences in your clients when the couple has those? I remember John and Julie Gottman talking about that there's usually arguments that you'll never resolve in your relationship, and you just have to learn to live with them. And
Yeah,
cultural and religious differences can be one of those.
yeah.
How do what's your approach? What's your basic thinking around when those problems that, you have different religions, you have different cultural backgrounds and beliefs about life, or, well, yeah. So how do you approach it?
Basically, it's about acceptance and grief. A lot of our fighting as couples is really one of the things I say, Zach, is that moving into maturity and intimacy often it means moving into a little more loneliness. For example, I'll be talking about helping people learn how to think relationally instead of individualistically. But when you think relationally, the answer to the question who's right and who's wrong is who cares?
Mm,
It doesn't matter. What matters is how are we going to manage this thing in a way that works for us? We're a team. But letting go of having your partner realize that they're wrong and you're right, it means differentiate. That's the differentiation. That's individuation. We can live in different realities. And it's hard to tolerate living in a
mhm.
different reality.
Yeah.
Um, I want to tell you two quick, I like to tell two quick stories. I have a tape actually. I'd love to play it at some point. The man is a self-described old style moderate Republican, and the wife is a QAnon supporter, and they're about to divorce. And what I talk to them about is grief. If you're going to stay together, uh, you don't have a difference of opinion. You live in different worlds, and you're going to have to tolerate that you live in different worlds with each other. And they did. Here's another one. I'm sorry, but I can't resist. A couple came to me, and this was the presenting problem. When they were New Yorkers. When they first started off, they were at the same level of secular religious Sephardic Jews, and then she became more secular, and he became more religious. So our conflict is I'm a black hat Jew and she's a bagel Jew, and we're going to kill each other. And I spoke with them about grief and allowing. And they came in and they said, we're ready to terminate. We've got it. The weekend after, on a Saturday, in front of the whole community, he was taking the kids to synagogue and she was mowing the lawn. Bye, bye. See you later. They said, we're okay.
Mhm.
So you have to really be in your wise and mature self to tolerate those kinds of differences, but you can
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, there's 92 questions. So I am trying to do the ones that are most upvoted, but also at the same time, there's questions coming in that haven't had time to get upvoted. So I am going to jump around a little bit. Don't hate me too much. Um, but um, when there is domestic violence, I think this is a huge issue, and
Uh,
you know, it this questioner kind of it seems like you're asking the sort of the one down partner to speak up, and that can be dangerous. So help us understand basically how you approach it when there is either a risk of violence or violence in the relationship.
okay, hold on one second. Real life, we're in Martha's Vineyard where every other resident has Lyme disease. My wife just texted me and said that she has a tick. Me too. We're going to deal with our ticks during a break. But let me just text her. Um, our break is at 11:30. Okay.
Public service announcement, please check yourselves for ticks at the break and every day.
Oh, unbelievable.
These ticks are awful.
Okay.
Did we
Domestic
mention this
violence.
is live? Okay. All right, let's go.
Yeah, no, I was doing one that's toilet flooded. It's just real life. Okay. Okay. So, uh, one of the eight lenses we call preconditions. And these are issues that must be dealt with before you can pretend to help a couple get closer to each other. You can still meet with a couple, but you're not really doing couples therapy. It's pre-couples therapy. You're dealing with one of the preconditions as a threesome. And the three preconditions are untreated major psychiatric disorder. I can't help you get closer to one another if there's depression or anxiety or OCD or even ADHD if it's bad enough without some help and coaching and possible medication. Two, I'm not saying you have to be in full recovery, but it has to be dealt with. Similarly, too, serious self-medication, shading into addiction. If you're sucking down 3 martinis a night, I'm not going to be able to take down your wall and be more open-hearted with your partner. So we have to deal with that. And then three is acting out, either violent or sexual. And there are some exceptions, but by and large, I won't pretend to be able to make the two of you closer to each other while there's a third leg. And I'm not talking about open marriage, I'm talking about deceitful cheating. I can help you weather it, but I'm not going to help the two of you get closer. Um, so that's sexual acting out. And then acting out in terms of violence.
Mhm.
And I can help you if the violence is verbal, but RLT takes a position that physical violence is a contraindication for couples therapy. I will not ask somebody to speak truth to power if it's literally dangerous to them. First, do no harm. First issue is safety. So if the victim gets a safety plan, maybe individual therapy, maybe a group, the person who either is or is at risk of being the perpetrator gets their own treatment, individual group, whatever. When that person can answer for themselves and there really is no threat of violence, then we can put you together again. But some people will work with it. God bless them. I won't.
Yeah,
Each of you does your own work until there's no threat of danger.
yeah, right. Um, Good. Okay, and just for review, just because we're gonna watch a lot of work, unedited. You're gonna see the highs and the lows, the fast parts, the slower parts. And you may want a little bit of a frame to begin. Remember, Terry mentioned those three phases, but just answering this because there's a little confusion. And then these eight lenses. We did not go over those eight lenses necessarily. So so you know that those are separate, the three phases and those eight lenses, which is part of the RLT training. So you're going to hear little bits and pieces. This is mostly a demonstration event, but we like to kind of have some basic pieces here. Next question, unless you got something with that. What about uh, put RLT a little bit in the context of this came up 2 or 3 questions, so I'm going to combine them. What do other well-known couples therapists say about RLT and where it's different? Where it's different. You've mentioned Sue Johnson, in her work, um, who is a good friend of both of us and recently passed away just not even 2 months ago. Um, you mentioned Sue's work with emotionally focused couples therapy. There's other therapies out there. I know you're close to all of these folks. Obviously, the similarities and differences are all over the place, but help us just understand basically where does RLT really differ and what do they say about RLT? What have they learned from RLT? I would say, what have they learned from RLT?
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know what other people will say. It's something disparaging, I imagine, because we all think our own system is the best.
Sure.
I know IFS a bit because Dick and I did a thing for about 8 months. We traveled through 7 cities in the U.S. and I did an RLT interview with a couple in the morning, and he did the IFS interview with the same couple in the afternoon, and we compared notes. So I know IFS a bit. I don't know EFT nearly as well. Um, I can't, I'm not, I don't know. I can't really speak intelligently about the nooks and crannies and the differences between the different ways of approaching. I will say this. Uh, I stand by the three phases. Um, a lot of couples therapy I see as heavy on nurturance and short on truth.
Mhm.
Uh, some forms of
Say that
therapy
again. Other therapies are
heavy
heavy.
on nurture and short on truth. One of Pia's 8 million sayings is intimacy, which is healing. It's a conjunction of love and truth. And therapy in general is a lot about nurture and less about confronting. And I think people can park in therapy for years, and it's very cozy, but they aren't really moving very much.
Mhm.
So I see a lot of what's in the field as one or maybe two of the three things that we do in RLT, but not all three. So Gottman is more skill-based. Behavioral is more skill-based. Sue comes closest to the three. She does her form of some trauma work, but not nearly as deep as we do. I don't know hardly anybody who does the confrontation the way that we do. I don't think you can do straight skill-based work without doing trauma, but I also think doing trauma without moving into skills is um, somewhat wishful thinking and
Mhm.
frankly arrogant. Uh, the core skill in RLT is what we call relational mindfulness. Which part of you am I speaking to? We all marry our unfinished business. We all trigger the hell out of each other. Relational mindfulness, which can be grown and cultivated, second consciousness, I call it, it is when you're, as Dan Siegel puts it, when the prefrontal cortex goes offline, the limbic system lights up. Relational mindfulness is about quieting the emotional brain and bringing the prefrontal cortex back on board. All trauma work does that. The difference in RLT is that we do that in a dramatic way in the office, but then equip you to do it for the rest of your life, in real life, in the heat of the moment. Take a break, take a walk, get recentered in the part of you that wants to make things better. So to me, it's a combination of really getting to know that adaptive child, what your knee-jerk responses are,
Yeah.
forming a relationship with that part of you to put your arms around them and quiet them, and then using learned skills that are beyond that immature part of you. You know, the IFS couples work is more trauma based. Gottman is more skill based. I don't know that many that really do
Right.
all three.
Right. Right. That's a great answer. I actually appreciate that. I know it's hard to talk about other, approaches. You don't want to, you know, there's just a lot of value to a lot of different ways of seeing couples, but that was a great answer. And someone also brought up Ellen Bader's great work in the developmental models.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There are a lot of ways. The Stan Tatkin,
Yeah.
Michelle Weiner Davis. There are lots of good.
Right. So many. Yeah, we can't mention them all. I really like this question, and because I know you're going to have some thoughts about it. So don't let us down here, Terry.
Okay.
Um, you're ready. Um, what do you say to the couple who comes in or talks to you and says, some therapists told us we need to do our individual work
Oh yeah.
first. Okay, there we go. And then come and do couples therapy. What's your answer to that?
You're talking to somebody who doesn't know how to do couples therapy.
Okay, all right.
The bane of
Say
my
more.
existence as a couples therapist is often individual therapist. This is a longer conversation, but the short version is this. I make a distinction between individual empowerment and relational empowerment. And individual empowerment, which is rife in our individualistic culture, read my book, Us, I summarize as I was weak, now I'm strong, go screw yourself. I am woman, hear me roar. I found my voice and I'm gonna, what you're doing is you're moving from this in the patriarchal binary, which it doesn't exist in reality. It's cultural, but you're moving from the traditional feminine to the traditional masculine.
Mhm.
No, one of the skills we teach is what I call standing up for yourself with love, soft power, loving power. I was weak, now I'm strong. I'm going to stand toe to toe with you. This is what I want from you. Now, honey, what can I give you to help you give it to me? Who sounds like that? So, individual therapists listen to one partner basically kvetch about the other partner. I like to show a scene from, he's disgraced, but Woody Allen's Annie Hall. Woody is a split screen. They're both talking to their individual therapist. And Woody's going, sex, sex. I'm lucky if I get sex 3 times a week. And Andy's going, sex, sex. I'm lucky if I get him off my back with just 3 times a week. And in unison, both individual therapists stand up and go, that's terrible. I wouldn't put up with that if I were you. A lot of individual therapy will individually empower somebody right out of a workable relationship.
Mhm.
Relational empowerment is new for our culture. And it's one of the ways in which the field of psychotherapy is up to its eyeballs in individualism and patriarchy.
Yeah.
So there's something beyond that. One of the greatest predictors of divorce is when a couple with a self-described relational difficulty each gets into individual therapy and there's no couples therapy.
Yeah.
Now, what somebody is saying is couples therapy, that's for the interaction, deep characterological change, that's it, go do that for that's in but in RLT, we're really unique in that we do deep characterological change in the crucible of the relationship.
Mhm.
And we don't farm out deep trauma work and characterological change. We do it with your partner sitting next to you. But
I really want to emphasize that, Terry. And we're coming up on our break here in just a couple of minutes. So, and then we'll come back at 10:45 Central, 11:45 Eastern, or whatever time zone you're in. But I just want to emphasize that, especially with all the emphasis on talking about narcissistic people who aren't even in the room, or individual therapists talking about the importance of boundaries, all important things, and yet relationality is sometimes missing in that mix. And I think, Terry, that's what you really brought in. So great work. I think one last question, and then we'll go to break. And maybe you could share us a little bit about what we should expect to see when you come back on. Because when you come back on, we're going to have our couple with us and you're going to be in Terry Real's office virtually, but you're going to be in Terry Real's real office. And not a lot of couples get to see Terry these days. And so to see this real time, Terry doesn't know what to expect exactly, um,
not all.
at all. So just maybe give us a little bit of a preview of what we should expect to see when we come back in 15 minutes.
I'll be looking at their presenting problem. What do you want? What do you want? What's getting in the way? I'll be looking at their stance, stance, stance. What's the vicious circle that they're in? Because that's what I'm here to change. And then we'll see maybe a little bit about where their dysfunctional stance comes from. If there is a power asymmetry, you're going to see me maybe move to empower the one down one. But first, I'm going to get the lay of the land.
Yep. Okay. Everybody got that? Good. So we're going to take a about a 15-minute break. 45 minutes or so, 15 minutes to the hour. We'll come back. That's 15 minutes from now. You're welcome to stay on your conference call here, or please get comfortable. The chat will not be on for the session nor the reactions. So I know you might be itching to say something, but obviously this is a real session, so we don't want any interruptions. So please, thank you for your understanding there. And if there's anything you need customer service wise, you can still reach out, of course. But other than that, we're going to be watching Terry do some real work for about 1 hour and 15 minutes. Then we'll have our lunch break. And then we're going to go right into session two after that. So two sessions today, real lifetime. And then we're going to have end with a review and a Q&A session. So buckle up. Here we go. We'll see you back here in 15 minutes. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Thank you, Zach.